one for the one and only DNVR. Two goes out to Zac, Mase, RK, and the bar. Three for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number four still waiting for, well, bring on the chase. Out on the field at Mile High, Broncos win is our desire. Coupled with a break, brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
We are DNVR, and we are live from Studio A here at the DNVR bar. And the A stands for astronomical, as in the Broncos are interviewing an astronomical number of candidates. And guys, today we are going to give you a breakdown of every single one of those candidates, speed round fashion. I'll tell you a little bit more about how that's going to work here in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at MSU Denver. MSU Denver is the presenting sponsor of this show and the single best place to go if you are looking to further your education online. MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as students attending any other college institution. And when you use the code DNVR, you can have your application fees waived. So check out our friends over at MSU Denver online.
My boys, what is up? I mean, we were all talking before the show. What a time to be alive. This feels so exciting, and it is, because George Paton is putting together a heck of a list. He's reaching every corner of nearly every possibility you could think of, and I love it. Right now, we're up to 9 confirmed potential interviews, and guys, we expect that list to jump over 10 today.
Yeah, it's wild. I love the wide net being cast out. Right now, it's heavy on assistants in terms of confirmed, light on former head coaches, but I think we're going to see at least a couple of more experienced names added to the list at some point, and I like this. We're going to seeing a diversity of thought, a diversity of philosophies on this list. Some of these are going to be picking brain interviews. Some are going to be legit for being the head coach, but it does not hurt to take your time and interview as many as possible, especially because you can do some of these over Zoom, so you don't even have to travel.
Exactly. Yeah, here, you think that's funny in the comment section? That's like funny in The Office. The comment section doesn't know that's a joke.
Yeah, it is really. Let's not forget, Ryan wanted Vic back.
Yeah, that is not what happened.
This is a sad day for him. That's now. Yeah, here. Thanks for bringing that up. Mace and I were so pumped to be talking about this, and Ryan was a sad sack over here.
Yeah, I love how many offensive candidates on there. I never wanted Vic Fangio back. I thought they might bring him back. I'm relieved that they didn't.
You were pretty clear on Saturday that both of you guys were trying to kind of warn people that this might happen.
Yeah.
And when I didn't have time to listen while you guys were on live. If I had, I would have probably left a comment that said, if I were there, I'd be telling you guys, I still think this is going to happen, that he's going to be dismissed.
That would have been nice.
Okay.
Because I think we were a little bit panic mode. I just, forget about
part of it was just kind of...
We're moving on from
We're moving on. We're moving on, but there was some buzz I kind of got wind of toward not long after the game to where that's where I knew. I said, this is almost certainly going to happen.
Yeah, I just kept hearing like, they're still thinking about it, and I just thought like the longer you think about it, the more chance he has of coming back.
We heard it from George Paton on Sunday, and quite a statement he made about Vic Fangio, saying that he's the best coach he's ever been around. And I believe George when he said that. That's how much he really liked him. But it was clear Vic Fangio was the leader of the defense. He was not the leader of the offense, special teams, and was not the leader of the organization. And that is why George Paton, that's his number one thing, is leadership. Vic didn't meet that. Now there's over 9 candidates right now that potentially may.
And that night, so many people came out saying, I love the off-season pods. The off-season pods are so exciting. And, man, George Paton came through for us by just making the first couple days of the offseason already this exciting. And all of us were talking before the show just how energized we are, not only just by the excitement of a coaching search, but by the names on this list. There's been times where the coaching list was very slim. I've pointed out that the Broncos didn't interview Sean McVay in that cycle. They also didn't interview Cliff Kingsbury in that cycle. So, this time it feels like all of the exciting candidates are on the list. And so that what we want to do here is go through all of them. but we got a lot to get through and not an unlimited amount of time. So how this is going to work is I'm going to give out a name. One of you two guys is going to give us the quick breakdown of them. Super producer Kale is going to bring up a timer. We have 3 minutes and 30 seconds to talk about each one of these guys and just give people a quick idea who is this guy so they can start to formulate their own opinions on whether they like this guy or whether they don't like this guy. Additionally, so you guys know that we're not leaving you in the dark here and going all in on some of these guys, whenever we get to the times when these people are interviewing, whether it's 1 a day, 2 a day, we will dedicate a whole show to talking just about that guy, more in-depth research. And then, of course, on the website,
I'm going to be writing about an article about every one of these candidates. Jerod Mayo is already up. We're going to have at least one more today, but over the next about 9-10 days, going to go through every one of these candidates, go through their resumes, their strengths, their weaknesses, etc.
So today's going to be the quick fire version, and then as time goes on, we'll dive deeper and deeper and deeper into each candidate. Of course, then they're going to narrow it down to less interviews.
Yep.
We'll dive even deeper into those guys. We'll have favorites that are going to change. We're going to update our big boards. We're going to update our predictor, and it's going to be fun.
Here's something you don't need to worry about. You're going to know all about these guys because this search is going to be long, and we're going to be knee deep in it this whole time, like Mase said, on the website, thdnvr.com, but also on this podcast.
All right, guys. Without further ado, the way we're going to do this is in order of when the interview was announced or the interview request was announced. Let's begin with the one that Mase has already written a piece on. Patriots inside linebackers coach Jerod Mayo.
Well,
Go.
As a coach, he has the thinnest resume. He's only been an assistant coach for 3 years. He hasn't been a coordinator. But this is a guy who's kind of on the rise. And when you hear George Paton talk about leadership and how important that is, and even Joe Ellis talking about kind of a leader for the organization, inspirational figure, this is Jerod Mayo to a T. He's been a leader almost since the day he walked into the Patriots building as a player back in 2008, became a team captain in just his second season, team captain the rest of his career, even was a leader on the business side, was advancing in a healthcare for a healthcare firm, had made vice president, and then when Bill Belichick asked him to come back and coach, he took that job kind of to pursue a dream, see where he went. But he's been a leader every step of the way. Yes, the resume is thin, and he may need some more seasoning, but if you're talking about an organizational leader, not even just a team leader, that's the attractiveness of Jerod Mayo. The question is, are you interviewing him for the head coach? Or are you thinking maybe you bring him in as a coordinator because he's never called plays before, and Steve Belichick has play calling responsibilities in New England?
I really like Jerod Mayo, but something you can't disagree with is he's the ultimate Patriot. Was a first-round pick by the Patriots, played with the Patriots his entire career, stepped away from football, like you said, Mase, when he came back, only with the Patriots. He's been in one organization his whole life, and that's the Patriot way. And for the most part, when you look at the Patriot way outside of New England, it's rough.
Yeah.
It's not very good. Now,
It hasn't worked as the Browns way or the Broncos way.
Right.
Or even, some would argue, the Dolphins way, even though I thought that did work.
Now,
Steelers' way is translated.
The Titans' way is the New England Patriots way in Tennessee is starting to work out. So that what I'm saying is that's something you cannot separate from him, and it is something that scares a lot of people. But if you're just going to say, I'm never taking a New England Patriots assistant coach, you're going to miss out on some good ones because there is a few. I think Brian Flores is good. Obviously, Mike Vrabel, in my opinion, is the coach of the year, but that's something that is very ingrained in him. He is the ultimate Patriot.
Yeah, and I do like this idea of interviewing guys who might be a candidate for a coordinator position for you later, and maybe they blow you away. Maybe he just blows George Paton away and he says, I can't let this guy go.
Yep.
The Broncos have been playing a less aggressive style of defense. If he's anything like Brian Flores, you're getting a much more aggressive style of defense. You know, when you fire guys, you often go in a different direction. Now, they could go the opposite and just keep Ed Donatel around and keep what they have in place. I expect to see the Broncos next season bringing all sorts of zero blitzes and that sort of thing from an aggressive defensive coordinator.
Yep, I completely agree. And Jerod Mayo, in terms of leadership, man, he is the ultimate leader in a very young career.
Yeah, very young career, and that's why his staff would be interesting, because does he look to veterans? I mean, like, for example, on the defensive side, does he try to bring Romeo Crennel, back, someone who's connected with the Patriots as a defensive coordinator, and also to kind of help him through stuff? So if Mayo were the head coach, the key would be his staff. Who's he bringing in to support him? Because he would be learning on the job.
You guys just talked me out of him in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. All right, that's Jerod Mayo, and that's about as good. This worked out great. I thought 3:30 was going to be too short. Perfect amount of time. Let's move on to the odds-on favorite here. Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn, former Super Bowl winning assistant coach as the defensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. That earned him, and that tough defense earned him a job with the Atlanta Falcons, where he went on and had a lot of success. And he's a defensive coach, but the biggest thing with him, and the one thing we've talked about and will continue to talk about, leadership. From a head coaching position, from a defensive coordinator position, and then the offense. He is not going to be Vic Fangio, where he says, I'm going to strictly call plays on defense. I'm going to only be in the defensive meeting room. I am going to also care about the offense and put a lot of resources into my offensive staff, who I care about. And my team is not just going to be defense first. We saw every single year but one, like Mase pointed out yesterday, he had a top 10 offense in Atlanta. Now, it helps that he had Kyle Shanahan. It helps
and
that
Matt
he
Ryan.
and it's Steve Sarkisian and Matt Ryan playing
And Julio
in his prime.
Jones.
And Julio Jones, absolutely. But still, he didn't ruin those pieces. How about we say it like that?
And what did we see from the Broncos this year? A waste of guys,
Right.
not like Julio Jones, but very talented.
It's very
players.
true. And Dan Quinn, the Falcons moved on from him, but he got the defensive coordinating job in Dallas, and only good things continue to come out about him. He's a very, very positive and upbeat guy, so I like that.
Here's the other thing also about Dan Quinn. Yeah, he had Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. They were never as good. That offense was never as good on a consistent basis before Dan Quinn arrived, and it wasn't. And obviously, after he got fired a few games into 2020. It wasn't as good after that. The 5 full seasons Dan Quinn was on the job, top 10 offense every year, and I mean, really, he went 3 for 3 on OC hires. Kyle Shanahan. They were still a top 10 offense with Steve Sarkisian. They were a top 5 offense in 2019 in total offense with Dirk Cutter, the former Buccaneer head coach, coming over. So that's something that's an attribute. He is really good at identifying coaches who are kind of on the way up or on the way back. Raheem Morris worked on the offensive side under him and also was a defensive coordinator for him. He had Mike McDaniel, a guy we may be talking about as the Broncos OC possibility down the line. Very good at identifying coaches who fit the staff, and that's key to leadership. Vic frankly failed at identifying his OC in 2020 and 2021 for Pat Shurmur. I don't think Dan Quinn would.
And people want to nail Vic Fangio for that, and then don't want to give credit to a Dan Quinn for that skill.
Exactly.
That's
a skill.
It is identifying offensive coordinators, identifying people that you want around you, hiring coaches, and then coaching those coaches is a skill. It's not just, he lucked into Kyle Shanahan and then everything fell apart after that, which is a narrative that is out there that simply isn't true. The team wasn't ever as good after it, but the offense, like Mase pointed out yesterday, did stay together. So hiring coordinators is a skill. Finding offensive coordinators is a skill. Being open-minded to forward-thinking offensive coordinators is a skill. Dan Quinn has them all.
And what we have not seen, the skill that is so important in this, is being able to identify young quarterbacks in the draft and then develop them. Obviously, he would probably rely on his staff for that, but he would still have to have a big voice in identifying them, and then developing would be on someone else.
There it was. 3 minutes and 30 seconds on Dan Quinn. And I got to admit, guys, Dan Quinn, the more I learn about him, the more I like him. And I know the fans don't like him because he's
3 minutes and 30 seconds. What are you doing
Because
here? No. You don't get this extra 30 seconds.
I
No.
do.
On to the next one.
I know the fans don't like it because he's defensive. I think there's a lot to like about Dan Quinn.
I think he's still the favorite, too.
He is.
On to the next one.
All right.
Hey, we'll get to our favorites and who's the favorite. Don't
All
worry.
right, fair enough. The other coordinator in Dallas and a fan favorite for sure, Kellen Moore.
You can't deny the success that Dallas has had on offense with Kellen Moore. I mean, really, kind of the big question here is he ready to step in? I mean, there's some Sean McVay vibes as far as you'd be hiring the youngest head coach in the NFL with Kellen Moore, but I don't think you should be afraid of that on him. The question with Kellen Moore is this. It's not that he isn't an accomplished offensive coordinator. And Mike McCarthy has given him pretty broad latitude, even though McCarthy is an offensive guy. He's given him pretty broad latitude to run the Cowboy offense as he sees fit, and it's gone to another level with Kellen Moore being in charge of that. The question here may be, can you offer enough to extract him from Dallas, because Jerry Jones prizes Kellen Moore in the same way that he prized Jason Garrett as a coach, as someone that he believes could be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Maybe you want to stay away then. Just kidding.
He feels the same way about Dan Quinn too. I mean, both of those guys there's buzz that Jerry could make them the highest paid coordinator on their side of the ball.
And higher paid than even some head coaches.
There's a big issue, though, if your team, not just the Broncos, but any team that wants one of these two guys can't pry them away. One, if they can't offer them enough money to pry them away, that's really bad. Now, I know Jerry can afford anything for a coordinator, but two, and probably the bigger thing, is having the opportunity to be a head coach. Dan Quinn, this will be his second time around. I'm sure he's really excited for it. And Kellen Moore as well. He's a guy that would have his first opportunity and get to be the next Sean McVay, get to be the next wonder kid in the NFL.
Did you say Wonder Kid?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. But,
not Wonder Kid? Ted Lasso?
Wonder Boy, right?
Well, when you said Wonder Kid, that's a Ted Lasso reference.
Oh, well, there we go.
Because
not even intentional.
Nate got confused. He didn't say Wonderkind as he meant to. He said Wonder Kid.
We're going to need stoppage time on this. Ted Lasso.
And here's one thing that I really like about Kellen Moore is the leadership. We haven't seen it that much, but former quarterback, typically big-time quarterbacks in college, which he was at Boise State, have that leadership skill. And so that's one thing that I'm willing to say, yeah, you don't have the experience, but you have this, so it probably gives you a good nod to being a leader.
Go ask a Boise State fan about Kellen Moore, and you'll find out about what a leader he is. He definitely has the leadership qualities, and he is the one that excites me the most because he is the biggest swing for the fences, but also, like I said yesterday, he's got this thing about him. I also really am confident in him being forward-thinking in terms of not just the way he calls the offense, but the quarterbacks that he's interested in. I think, you had John Elway wanting 6'5" quarterbacks, and because he's a smaller guy.
Okay.
And I think that he's not gonna be someone who says, "Oh yeah, 6 foot tall is too short for a quarterback." Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, these are guys who are ruled out by the Broncos because of their size. I think that Kellen Moore could be opposite of that. He also could say, I struggled in the NFL because I wasn't big enough. We need big quarterbacks.
That's true. And my only thing against him, he was given Dak Prescott. He was given so much talent on the offensive side of the ball. I could have had success there, but I'm sure he elevated them.
He has an ID to quarterback. Right. That's the thing.
Yep. A lot of these guys haven't, and that's why I'm not going to talk about Kellen Moore.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
I was going to say, a lot of these guys haven't, and that's why yesterday I put out, I'd like to see the Broncos interview Pep Hamilton, who was the Charger on the Charger staff when they identified Justin Herbert and developed Justin Herbert. And to me, that's something that I would at least want to hear from.
Big part of Andrew Luck's development as well.
Yes.
If you don't have the quarterback, it doesn't matter who your head coach is. We've already established that. That's why I think a key part of your next head coach is being able to identify or put a staff around you to identify that guy.
Well, this next guy might be able to identify a quarterback that he really wants. Plays on his team right now. It's Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, one of the hottest names on the market right now, and one of the front runners for the Broncos job. The Broncos did officially put that interview in for him, and he is a guy that has not only had success with Aaron Rodgers, which, okay, I give him, a golf clap for that. But what he did in Jacksonville, which we discovered a couple of weeks ago, is even more impressive. Leading a top 5 offense with Blake Bortles and really playing to that team's strengths was really impressive. That could do really, really well for Javonte Williams moving forward if Nathaniel Hackett is the guy. But then to get past just the football, Nathaniel Hackett, talk about energy. He is a guy that brings so much energy and passion, and he's a guy, we've read some articles about how he's able to cater to every single person and know exactly how to lead an offensive lineman, know how to lead a quarterback. And right now it seems a pretty difficult task to lead Aaron Rodgers, yet I believe Nikki Javala had an article that said he would be a fantastic head coach. He does not want to lose him because he'd be a fantastic head coach. And man, if you're able to sign off and get Aaron Rodgers approval, it really means that you're able to cater to every single type of person. And then, of course, he does have the Aaron Rodgers connection, but I'm going to stay by this. You cannot hire him with the expectation of getting Aaron Rodgers. If that's the reason you're hiring him, you need to hire someone else.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, the question is, can he ID a quarterback? Because he inherited Blake Bortles. Now, in Buffalo, he was the OC when they drafted E.J. Manuel. And that was a swing and a miss. But that was okay, we have to take a swing in a really bad quarterback class. I don't want to kind of use that against him. I do recommend if you can read the Nikki Javala article in the Washington Post on Nathaniel Hackett.
Friend of the program.
It really dives into how different he is, how creative he is in meetings in terms of explaining concepts, working in cultural references, really connecting with his players, getting onto their level, and the way he manages individuals. Frankly, it's Bill Parcells-esque. He's the gold standard of managing to the individual personality and psychology of players, understanding that you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach to player management, and that's something that Nathaniel Hackett really understands. A great deal of emotional intelligence that Hackett possesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get past the Rodgers connection as the most exciting thing about him. But I think if you read that article, you can get excited about other things about him. Right now, he's the Rodgers guy, and he's a lot more than that. So I do encourage everyone to check out the Nikki article. And this is a guy who could really, really be exciting regardless of the quarterback. And then, hey, if you get Aaron Rodgers, well, doesn't matter what he does, he's going to look great.
Exactly. He's going to have to identify other quarterbacks, and a knock against not just him, but we have to put this in there, Jordan Love. He was part of drafting him, and then on top of that, developing him. Jordan Love has looked really bad so far. It does not look like he's developed at all. That I don't want to put it all on him, but that's something that you have to acknowledge as well. Jordan Love could be a total bust because of him, or the coaching couldn't have helped out as well. But if we're going to give credit for a coach developing a guy, we also have to look at guys who didn't develop guys.
Yeah, and who knows really how much.
It's something out there, though. You have to take that into account.
How much he hasn't played enough to really get a read, in my opinion.
I think the Packers would have moved on from Aaron Rodgers if they loved him.
All right,
yeah, you passed the buzzer here.
We
fellas.
passed the buzzer. This is going great. I like this. I'm having fun with this. Before we move on to the next group of candidates, want to tell you about our friends here at the DNVR bar downstairs. You got to come check us out here. The best place to watch a game. Zach, sorry last night's game didn't go your way.
Yeah, it was tough.
I guess sometimes defense does win championships, although it did help that they lost their best receiver.
the other
They
thing
didn't have their second best receiver.
What's a bummer is you really pull for the underdog, and the underdog just wasn't able to come through.
But here's the thing. When Alabama has lost these games, remember they lost to Clemson a couple of times.
Yep.
What did Clemson have that Georgia had last night? An amazing front four and front seven. I mean, I remember. I think it was when Deshaun Watson was still Clemson's quarterback, right? And they won and beat him. But it was that Clemson D-line that stole the show. Like,
of course.
And every one of those guys got drafted. And that was what made me think that Georgia might get it done, was Georgia's defensive talent mirrored the type of defensive talent, especially in the front seven, that Clemson had and was able to counter Alabama in the past. I think that's the key thing. You've got to be really stout up front on the defensive line, have guys that can win their matchups, that can stunt, that can twist, and cause a lot of problems for Alabama's protection scheme. That's the kryptonite for Nick Saban's offense.
What's crazy is it was a rebuild year, and they went to the national championship game. They're going to win next year. And really quick, a quick Broncos connection. Watching Will Anderson, and it's been on display this entire year, but specifically last night, he's going to be the number one drafted non-quarterback in 2023, but he has a Von Miller jump. And I've never seen that in a college player where it
Since
looks
Vaughn.
like he's offsides every single play, and he's not.
It can actually be a detriment because a lot of times the refs are like, that looks weired.
And
Flag.
Credit to the refs last night
They didn't
because
call it.
there were multiple times where me and the announcers were like, was he offsides there? And then they went back and played it in slow-mo, and he wasn't.
Can we say also, even though it was a rough night for Bryce Young, can we now say that between Will Anderson, Bryce Young, and C.J. Stroud, you have 3 guys for 23 who are better than anybody in 22?
Yeah.
And
I agree.
that's why,
prospects.
not to get into
Yes.
a big take here, that's why I believe there should be a committee that players can appeal to as to why they should be able to enter the draft early. There's no reason those guys should be playing college ball next year. There's none.
They would be the top 3 picks.
They
Exactly.
would. They really
this
would.
draft
So
this
all
year.
they're doing is just risking their careers by playing next year. I think it's silly.
And you hate to see Jameson Williams go out.
Killed me.
Yep.
Anyways,
Yeah.
the DNVR bar, come check us out. Have the chicken sandwich, have a beer to wash it down, and have some great company around you when you do so.
Today and tomorrow, you can get 20% off Sexy Pizza by going online and using the code SEXYDNVR. They're giving our listeners 20% off to try their delicious, delicious pizza. You can't go wrong with any pizza, and they're also Colorado local native. We love supporting those companies, and we love their pizza too. So make sure to check them out tonight and tomorrow to get 20% off by using the code SEXYDNVR.
You know what? I had sexy pizza last night.
Oh, how
I
was it?
had pepperoni and garlic.
Yum.
Oh, it was really good.
You're making me hungry.
And I had
sounds
and
incredible.
by the way, try their Italian salad. Really good. Got a little salami on it, little pepperoni. They get some fresh grated mozzarella on there, olives, some peppers. Oh man, that was magnificent last night.
You're killing
Sounds
me,
great.
Mase. It's not even 11.
I mean, yeah, you know what? The thing is, the game, it got off to a boring start. I'm like, I'm just gonna go get a nice meal here, and so watched the game, had some sexy pizza, and it was a very sexy salad too. So
There you go.
sounds so good.
check all that out. Also check out our friends over at Light Shade Dispensary if you want to get a discount. 25% off everything at Light Shade Dispensary by using the code DNVR. You shop online at lightshade.com, and then you can go in and pick up at any one of their 10, soon to be 11 Denver metro area locations. So check that out. You can go to lightshade.com and put your order in, pick it up at your nearest location, or go directly to one of those 10, soon to be 11 Light Shade locations. They've got Wana Optimals, Fast Asleep, 20 to 100 THC to CBD. If you need to catch up on some shut-eye after the big game, you can take those Wana Optimals. You might find, hey, you're having trouble sleeping. Maybe, right now, having trouble sleeping with all this talk about coaching searches and what we're going to get into with quarterbacks in the coming weeks and potential owners. I might need some of that. I think I'm going to check that out and get one of those Fast Asleep Wana Optimals, and I can get it at 25% off by using the code DNVR. So check out everything that they've got over there at Lightshade Dispensary and lightshade.com. DNVR for 25% off. They've got 10 locations in the Denver area, like I said, soon to be 11.
All right. Let's jump back into this, guys. Let's get the timer ready.
Yep.
And this was a surprise one for me. And I think, Mase, this is your turn.
Yeah.
Eric Bieniemy.
A surprise.
I want to start saying Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. I want to get that in there. 'cause we
Offensive
haven't been
coordinator
saying
for the Chiefs, and obviously we know the Chiefs' offense has been successful. A key thing here for this interview is that George Paton worked with Eric Bieniemy with the Minnesota Vikings. Bieniemy was the running backs coach as Adrian Peterson got going when George Paton was there. So there is a connection here between Paton and Bieniemy. Of course, if you look at what's gone on with the Chiefs, it's been fantastic, no doubt. You got great talent. Eric Bieniemy working hand in hand with Andy Reid, the head coach, has done a good job as OC. He's not the play caller per se. Andy Reid has a lot of play calling responsibilities, although Bieniemy is involved more and more over the years. And you could see on Saturday, a lot of Saturday's play calling, Eric Bieniemy was at the forefront of
He's
that.
got the sheet.
He's got the sheet. He's relaying. He's the one that's in Patrick Mahomes' helmet with the call. So they've put more on his plate. If you look at him as a Kansas City assistant, yes, very qualified to be somebody's head coach. The problem is, especially around here, we look back at his time at CU a decade ago as OC under John Embry. As you know, RK, awful lot wrong with that program, but it was kind of disastrous.
It was a tire fire.
I love that they are interviewing EB because it's someone they absolutely should. He's one of the hottest candidates, one of the best offensive minds out there. There's nothing against him with that. But then you think about leadership and everything, and this isn't just from things that you've told me, so I'm not just putting you out there, but everything I haven't heard anything about him, or I shouldn't say that. A lot of things I've heard have made me question his leadership. And if that's the number one thing George Paton is looking for, I find it hard that he's going to get the job. Now, people can change.
Yes.
Absolutely, that can happen. But just from what I've heard, when he's been in control, it's been a little bit of a interesting situation, so to say.
Yeah, and the elephant in the room here is that he's had lots of legal issues, especially in the state of Colorado. At one point, it was banned from CU's campus for a year for an assault charge that was on him. There's several things that I don't think the Broncos are going to go down that road after already hiring a former CU player who had a legal history in Boulder. It just feels like it's not going to happen. That's why I was surprised to see him on the list. With that said, people can change, and all of that stuff was a long time ago, but there's a lot of similarities there to obviously a very recent failed head coach hire in Vance Joseph. And like you said, he's not necessarily one of those people who is lauded for his leadership.
Right. And sorry.
And I will say a lot of his running backs in the NFL, I think would tell you they loved him. I think a lot of his players at CU would tell you they had their issues.
And that's when he had the most responsibility, the most players under his watch. Because in Kansas City, even as OC, you've got Mike Kafka, is also the pass game coordinator as well, who's kind of also working hand in hand with him too.
This shouldn't be held against him,
Yeah.
but one thing is he's got a lot of interviews and no jobs. You wonder why.
Yep, for sure.
Happened to Tony Dungy, though, a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
He interviewed for a decade. Nobody hired him. He became a Hall of Fame
Yep.
head coach.
I'm not saying that you should hold that against him. It's just an interesting question.
Vic Fangio, another guy who got a lot of interviews and not a lot of jobs.
Yep.
All right, next one. Jonathan Gannon, defensive coordinator for the Eagles.
Who? Jonathan
Easy.
Gannon. He is viewed, if you want to say Kellen Moore is the Sean McVay route, Jonathan Gannon is the Brandon Staley route. 39 years old, young defensive mind, and has only been a defensive guy. You look at every job he's ever had, only defense. So this is a guy who you would be hiring purely for his leadership. You wouldn't be hiring him because he's identified a good staff before, because he's identified a quarterback before. He's a first-year defensive coordinator. Before that, he was the defensive backs coach with the Colts, and before that, and a key right here, he was the assistant defensive back coach of the Minnesota Vikings for 4 seasons from 2014 to 2017. So big-time George Paton connections there. A couple of things. I saw a lot of Eagles fans and a lot of chatter for yesterday about Eagles fans saying, take him.
Yeah.
And to me, that's...
Eagles fans don't like anyone.
Well, that's also very true. But to me, I'm thinking, that's interesting. And the Eagles defense, up and down, they started this year very poorly. But then for a 10-game stretch before this past week, they were giving up 16.5 points per game. So for 10 games, the defense really came together. And then this past week did not matter. So that's why I didn't include it in this stat. But they gave up 51 points to the Cowboys. It didn't
And
matter
they rested
for them.
their
They've
starters.
rested guys.
Exactly. That's why I didn't include it in that. But so for the most of the second half of the season, their defense was really good. So this is a up-and-coming young defensive stud.
Also, not only up and coming, but the other job that he had other than being on the defensive side, he worked as a scout with the St. Louis Rams. So he actually
He had two
has
different scouting jobs.
Yeah, he was college scout and then a pro scout. So he actually has personnel in his background, which is something that I think is an attribute for him in terms of helping George Paton in terms of putting together a roster. This is a positive for him.
Yep.
I think kind of the question on him is, similar to Jerod Mayo. I mean, Mayo hasn't been a coordinator. Gannon's only been a coordinator for 1 year, and as recently as 2017 wasn't the DB's coach. He was the assistant defensive backs coach.
Yeah.
So is it his time just yet? And then, like you said, with Eagles fans, it's interesting because we're going to get into another candidate later whose defense appears unimpressive on the surface, but their team's fans don't want to see him go.
Okay, so then Brandon Staley, really quick. He was a guy that was the Broncos outside linebacker coach one year with the Rams as a coordinator, and then got the head coaching job. And yes, he's made some questionable decisions this year, but I still overall think the Chargers love him. So that's why I think he's exactly that Brandon Staley.
Vance Joseph, another guy though, who was a 1-year coordinator.
Of course.
Before, so
Mike Vrabel was a 1-year coordinator too.
But I'm saying there's success. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's certainly also not the ticket to success.
Yeah, with this one, this completely screams to me. George Payton knew him in Minnesota and said that guy's going to be a head coach one day. Now that he has the opportunity to hire a head coach, I want to see what he's got.
Or also help him out.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think also maybe like, hey, here's a chance to start getting this guy on radars.
Yes, 100%.
So,
The coaching.
He hasn't had a head coaching interview. This is going to be his first. This is going to get him some attention. Get this guy's career going forward as he gets into his 40s.
We're really fighting over these seconds at this point. All right, next one here. Oh, I guess we got one more second. Next one here is another young coordinator, Kevin O'Connell from the Rams, the offensive coordinator there.
Of course, he worked for Sean McVay.
Yes.
Yes.
Does he have good hair too?
He has pretty good hair. He
Yeah.
does.
He's got a great stature, 6'5", 220.
Yeah, if you work for Sean McVay and you're handsome, you got a great chance.
LA's the place to be.
Yes, it is.
LA is the place to be, and certainly we've seen Sean McVay assistants have success, and that's not something that is debatable. Like Zach Taylor didn't have play calling experience working with Sean McVay. He's done very, very well. Matt LaFleur.
Wonder why.
Yeah.
Burrow.
He got Joe Burrow, but to his credit, he coached Joe Burrow up, identified Joe Burrow, and that's the thing. Like just with Kevin O'Connell, he's kind of been exposed to that secret sauce, as it were, the same secret sauce that Matt LaFleur had, the same that Zach Taylor had. So is he the next to come off of the McVay tree and flourish? I mean, he has just the 2 seasons as OC there. He was briefly the OC in Washington after Jay Gruden got fired, and there were some staff shuffles in 2019. Only has been an assistant coach in the NFL for 7 seasons, and in the last 2 as OC, a non-play calling OC. But this is again about is he the next branch of the McVay tree to bear fruit? That's more what O'Connell's about.
Kevin O'Connell. I love this name, guys. I love this name. You like Kellen Moore. You love Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
I like Kellen Moore. O'Connell is my young up-and-coming offensive guy that I absolutely love. Sure, it can be held against him that he hasn't called plays, but that doesn't concern me because of how ingrained he is into the offensive system with the Rams. Get this, when Brandon Staley left the Chargers last year, he tried to bring O'Connell with him to be the offensive coordinator. So Staley loves him, wanted him to be in control of the offense. McVay said, I'm not letting you go. And he could do that because he was technically the offensive coordinator. Now, he would have got a bump because of play calling responsibilities, and McVay did let Matt LaFleur go in order to do that. But McVay said, no, I'm not letting O'Connell leave because he is so ingrained. He's going to help me so much with Matthew Stafford. He doesn't call the plays, but he does more. From pretty much the research I did, he does more than any other offensive coordinator
makes the script every week.
Has done for him. Exactly. So I love him because he's got Sean McVay's stamp of approval, Brandon Staley's stamp of approval, and I think this guy is the next thing. 37 years old, former quarterback.
Former pro quarterback as well.
Exactly. Spent 5 years in the NFL, drafted by the Patriots. So if I'm going to give the nod to Kellen Moore for leadership from a quarterback standpoint, I'm also going to give him a little bit of a nod as well.
Where did he play?
San Diego State.
Okay.
3rd round pick back in 2008.
Yeah, how about that? They used a 3rd round pick when Tom Brady was balling on a quarterback.
Wow. All right. Yeah, I'm really interested in him. Love just about everything about him other than just the fact that he hasn't had those play calling responsibilities. But maybe he doesn't need that.
But again, he being with McVay, I think we kind of have to overlook that a little bit because of the track record of success of McVay assistants moving on who didn't have that. Again, the Patriots tree, the Patriots Belichick tree hasn't borne a lot of fruit. McVay's already has. I'm
going to say one last thing here. Sean McVay, when he got hired, what did he do? He brought in Wade Phillips to be his defensive coordinator. Wonder if our friend O'Connell here would be interested in the same thing.
From everything Wade has said on Twitter, I think he'd be open for it.
I think he would too.
I think Wade has one more chapter left in him. for a team that's smart enough to bring him in.
I want to be a part of that chapter.
Man, so it'd be his third stop in Denver?
Yeah, and he unblocked Mase.
There we go.
I found out it was one of those. You know how sometimes you can kind of mass block people.
No,
like they're like you can because there's like a response to it. Someone responded to me, and he just blocked everyone that was on that. And I appealed to Judge Phillips, Judge Wade, and I'm back in the good graces now.
We're back, baby.
I'm back.
Talk about a 3-ring circuit guest.
Oh my!
Three circus, yeah.
Oh my gosh, he'd be a blast.
All right, Mase, I think you mentioned this guy earlier, teased him up a little bit in terms of a defensive coach who certainly does not have impressive defensive numbers, but is a guy that for some reason the fans in Detroit want to keep around. It's Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator of the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Glenn is a defensive back all the way. Former first-round pick in 1994, was a good defensive back. And then his whole coaching career has been as a defensive backs guy, was with the Saints as the defensive backs coach before following the staff to Detroit to be their defensive coordinator. First-year defensive coordinator last year. And this guy, everything I've heard about him is he has that leadership quality to him. Now, an older guy, 49, not old, but compared to the other guys we've talking about, has some experience to him. Also has that scouting experience to him as well. I think that's something George Payton absolutely loves to have in a potential candidate. Like Ryan said, the Lions defense, not only were the Lions bad last year, their defense was pretty darn bad, the second worst in the NFL. So you're not bringing him over here because of what he's done in the NFL as a defensive guy. It's who you think he is as a leader and who you think he can bring with him and the staff he can create.
Yeah, that's the key, because on the surface, Aaron Glenn, coming from a defense that was 31st in points allowed, 29th in first down rate, 29th in yards per play, 29th in total defense, that's going to be a tough sell, especially that's his only year as a coordinator. You get kind of the same vibes as when you brought in Vance Joseph. Only a coordinator for 1 year in Miami, and it wasn't very successful. And so that's the kind of thing that gives you pause. So what kind of staff is he putting together? You know, Dan Campbell, that staff was heavy on ex-NFL players, like, for example, Aaron Glenn. Even Anthony Lynn, who just got sacked as OC, he's a former NFL player as well. So that's where you talk about the connections, like Zach mentioned. What kind of staff does he put together with the connections that he's made around the league?
Yeah, I got to be honest, guys. This one gives me the least excitement. You know, if every time I've read this name there was a meter that went 0 to 10, the meter just shook a little bit and then went back. This doesn't do much for me on an excitement standpoint. Now, maybe I'm convinced if George Payton says this guy is the leader, you know, but that is what they said about Vance Joseph too, not to compare the two guys, but there's got to be something more there that you can pull from to say this guy is impressive because of X, Y, and Z. And if all you can point to is he's a leader of men, I'm going to have some red flags going up.
Maybe they say leader of players. That's what he is. No, but there is nothing that can sell Aaron Glenn. And I'm sorry for that, but I am not going to bash the Broncos for interviewing anyone and everyone, no matter what their candidacy, what their record is, what their path is. I think it's great. The more people, the better. And I've had a lot of people ask me on Twitter, is there a limit? No, there's no limit. They could interview everyone. Obviously, it just extends the process, and you might lose a guy by doing that, so that's why you wouldn't do that. But for me, I love that they're interviewing him. They cannot sell this to the fan base. They absolutely can't. It'd be
tough sell. The one thing that could intrigue me is this. John Elway was not good at evaluating his own position, quarterback, but he was very good at evaluating pass rushers.
Yeah.
Aaron Glenn, is he good at evaluating quarterbacks because as a corner, he faced them, and he has that scouting background. That's one thing that I'd want to pick his brain
You'd be
about.
going on a limb if you did that.
You've heard about going 6 to midnight. I went 6 to 5:30 when I heard that name. So there you go.
I see. It's a below the belt reference.
Oh, man.
Shout out Manscaped.
Yes.
All right, last one here. Now, let me just clarify. There has been some buzz this morning about Doug Peterson and Brian Flores getting an interview. And then there was some anti-buzz against that.
And there's been even more anti-buzz in the last couple of minutes against Doug Peterson having an interview. Mike Kliss coming out and saying that there is absolutely no interview set up right now.
I need an answer as to why.
Oh my gosh, me too. That's something we can talk about.
Yeah, and that's if there's one disappointment that I have in this group of 9, it's that there's only one with prior head coaching experience.
Yeah, and
I would like to see some more.
We could find out. We could see a tweet right now that says the Broncos have concluded an interview with Jim Caldwell to be their next head coach. Well, wow.
Because they don't want to ask permission, so
Right.
it doesn't get out there.
Exactly. There's no reason for that to leak. But there's almost like does George Paton have something against Doug Peterson? Because it almost feels like when like Beth Bolin threw her name into the ring for ownership, and all of a sudden there was all this like no way from all these different sources
right.
like coming out. Like to me, it feels like there's some sort of grudge there. I don't know. Maybe not a grudge, but some sort of reason why the Broncos would want to shoot that down so aggressively.
To me, if they really don't interview Doug Peterson, and to me, I think that would be a massive mistake because you're interviewing so many guys.
Just interview everyone.
Interview him. It would probably be because he knows something or believes some sources about how it ended in Philadelphia because everything else was good. So that's what I have to imagine they would be pointing to.
And that's the interesting thing with Brian Flores as well, because who's running the show in Miami? It's Chris Grier, who's worked for the Dolphins for 2 decades, worked for the Dolphins when George Paton was down there as well.
Yeah.
And so, we know how Paton has myriad connections that he's made over the years from places that he's worked. Certainly, if Paton talked to Chris Grier about Brian Flores, the report probably wouldn't be positive because every indication is that there was friction between Grier and Flores that led to the move that happened yesterday.
Maybe when the Eagles knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs after the Minnesota Miracle, is that what they call it? Mm-hmm. Maybe Doug Peterson like flipped off George Paton going to the locker room or something.
Or maybe he, and as in draft day, maybe he wrote down never Doug Peterson.
Maybe he doesn't like ice cream, George Paton.
Maybe.
Dougie P loves him some ice cream.
That's
All
my
right.
guy then.
We got to hit our last one here. This one, the most surprising, the name that I would venture to guess 90% of our chat right now has never even heard before this morning. It's Luke Getsy, the Packers quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator.
So Nathaniel Hackett's right hand, and Nathaniel Hackett is Matt LaFleur's right hand. And LaFleur, of course, is the one calling plays, so he's kind of 2 steps down here, which is interesting. He's also been with the Packers all but 1 year since 2014. Took a year in 2018 to go be Mississippi State's offensive coordinator, which is his play calling experience was there.
How'd it go?
Okay. Yeah. But here's the thing that I think is really interesting. Sometimes, as the Broncos did with Vance Joseph in 2015, you have a head coaching interview, but you're thinking maybe this is a coordinator here. So Luke Getsy worked for 4 seasons under Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is now the boss of both Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore. Is this interview for Getsy as a head coach? Or is it for him being a possible OC for either of those guys that are working under McCarthy right now?
Or Hackett.
Yeah,
There's 3 guys.
See, I don't think Green Bay would let both Hackett and Getsy go.
But
They wouldn't have a
wouldn't they
choice.
both be getting promotions?
Well,
They would
be getting promotions, but the Green Bay, the easiest move they could say is, Luke,
We're
we're gonna promote you to OC.
But now Luke could have the choice, though, couldn't he, to leave the Broncos if he wanted to?
To leave the Packers.
Let's say he's closer with Hackett now.
And the other thing is, in general, it's frowned upon to teams don't like it when you take one and then you take a few others from that.
What are you gonna do about it?
I was gonna say I wouldn't care if that's the guy he wants.
That's why I actually think this is more about
Quinn
a Quinn or a Kellen Moore hire.
And here's what I'll say: I hate that if that is the case. And the reason I would hate it is because this next head coach should be able to put together his own staff. And if you're interviewing guys that aren't under Hackett, because Hackett just makes sense. For him to be Hackett's offensive coordinator, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, Hackett, that's probably a guy he would want. So then the Broncos kind of get a head start on that. But if you're interviewing this guy and then you're saying to Dan Quinn, well, we like this guy.
No,
other way around.
Other
way around.
I think it may have. I think that the connection may have already been made through McCarthy.
Oh, see, I think it's Dan Quinn who's saying.
But see, if it's I see what
I
you're
think
saying.
Dan Quinn, for example, had and he and McCarthy talked about it, and they kind of and maybe for all we know, they've already had the conversations.
They're going to bring Getsy in, buy him a really nice steak, and say, hey, look, we're really interested in you. We think we're going to go with Dan Quinn. He's also really interested in bringing you in as offensive coordinator.
Well, then what are we doing? Then I don't like this whole coaching search because we all three yesterday said Dan Quinn is the favorite. I think we all believe that. We'll get into that in just a second. Yeah. But now if you're already building your staff for him on the first day, I really don't like that. I don't like it at all.
I understand where you're coming from, 100%. And unfortunately, I think that's where this whole thing is heading is we're going to do a big song and dance, and then, woo, it's Dan Quinn.
But then it's like, okay, you get Dan Quinn, you get the experience, but here you also tap into someone that Aaron Rodgers likes,
right, exactly.
And somebody who understands and again, through Matt LaFleur, is part of the McVay tree.
Yeah, I think that's the thing here is he's an outside candidate who also has some really high recommendations from other people on the list.
And that's why I hope they're interviewing him, not for other future head coaches.
But he could be this week, and that's the thing. Like most of these candidates, we're talking about an interview next week. But in the case of Getsy and Hackett, you can get these interviews done this week.
All right, this was awesome.
Yep.
Yes.
I feel like that was a fire hose of information. I hope you guys are paying attention closely. Sorry to your employers.
I know some people listen to it on 1.5 times speed. For this one, you may have to slow it down to like 0.75. Yeah.
By the way, I had never listened to a podcast at 1.5 speed until I listened to you guys on Saturday night while I was waiting for my dinner over at In-N-Out when I was picking it up. It's a phenomenal experience at 1.5 speed.
For some reason, I can't do it. The warp that it does to the voices really
Zach is crazy at 1.5 speed. Like,
that's how I hear him in real life. All right. So, with all of that information on the board, it's time to update both of our boards, the DNVR Broncos Coach Predictor and our favorites. Where do you want to start?
Big board update.
Yes. The Search 2022.
Let's start with who we think they're going to go with.
Okay. Does anyone feel compelled to change Dan Quinn from their number one?
No.
Until he was the third guy yesterday. No way.
No.
Yeah, no way for me either. It's going to be really hard for anything to happen for me to knock Dan Quinn from number one. It might have to take him not getting a second interview for me to even consider taking him out of number one.
I completely agree. He's very clearly the top of the class right now.
Yep. Okay. Now
yes, absolutely. I'm changing number two.
Here's where some big movement can happen. Doug Peterson, there is something there. I don't know what it is. If he's not getting an interview, we obviously have to take him off the list.
Yes. He is completely off my board. Doug Peterson is off my board right now. And
who are you going to?
To replace him in the Broncos' eyes, Nathaniel Hackett. Not only do they have the interview offer him, but on top of that, also, I think interviewing the guy below him is just a little extra boost for him.
I have a feeling we're going to agree on this because I'm going that.
I am too.
I'm going Hackett too.
He, to me, looks like their number one offensive. And really, he's going to move up my rankings, too, much thanks to that article from Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, for three guys, I'm curious if we agree on this one. The other guy in Dallas, I'm going Kellen Moore.
I don't want to agree.
As number 3.
Yeah, I'm... Actually, I'll go... No, I'm going the same.
Mase? You can disagree. You can agree.
You
don't
know
feel
what?
pressure either way.
I think the guy who could really wow George Payton is Jerod Mayo.
Oh, love this. I love that.
So I'm going Mayo number 3.
That excites me.
And funny enough, that's who I'm going with number 4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is Jerod Mayo for this. Leadership. He's got all of it. And remember, he was not scarred by Josh McDaniels. He has no ties to the Broncos when Josh McDaniels came here and scarred him. And if anyone is going to give the Patriots another chance, it was never going to be John Elway, because he came in to clean up that mess, and Joe Ellis is also tied to that. It could be George Paton.
And the more kind of diving into even like the corporate background on him.
Yep.
The Broncos are looking for not just a coach of players and coaches. They are looking for an organizational leader.
Yep.
And that just, the more I studied him and studied that part of his background yesterday, it kind of clicked. And knowing kind of, even though Joe Ellis is not involved, certainly I think George Paton will keep Joe Ellis in the loop. And Joe's kind of made it clear kind of what will convey kind of what the Broncos as an entire organization needs. And Mayo is the kind of guy who I think can bridge gaps that exist between parts of that organization, between departments, football and non-football.
I think that's too much on his plate, in my opinion.
If he has the right staff, and again, that's where you want to see who are his coordinators. I mean, I think you might see an old hand that is at retirement age, like Romeo Crennel as an assistant head coach, for example, to Jerod Mayo. You might see some guys that are in there that really kind of help him. You know, the late Dan Reeves had Marvin Bass around, who'd been with him before to kind of help guide him through the early years with the Broncos especially. So if Mayo has the right people around him, I think he can work.
Bill Belichick hates the Broncos. He's already sent one mole here. I'm not taking any more chances.
So who do you guys have it for?
Well, I haven't updated my 3 yet.
Oh.
And I'm really tied between leaving it how it is. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave Kellen Moore there.
Okay.
When I think of leadership between him and I'll just say my 4th right now, which is Kevin O'Connell, I guess I just give the nod a little bit to Kellen Moore, knowing he's one of the at the time I believe he was the winningest college player in history, or college quarterback in history. That goes a long way. He's a leader there. Mm-hmm. He's been a leader for this team. He has that, obviously, the quarterbacking, just like Kevin O'Connell, but those two are like neck and neck for me. It's going to come down to the interview, which I'm not going to be in. I'll keep it as Kellen Moore. He's the hotter name.
And Mase, you sticking with Morris?
No, unfortunately. I put him on there
dark horse.
As a dark horse,
totally fair.
Somebody who I think should be on their list, but I'm actually disappointed that he's not on lists in the last couple of days. But that's another story entirely. So I'm going to go with Kellen Moore for now. But we're going to update this every day, right?
Yep.
As often as we want. And I love this. Look how much has changed in a day. Wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here tomorrow. Hey, if Doug Peterson gets an interview, I can guarantee you he's jumping back up on my big board. But as of now, no. All right, let's go.
But let me make this clear, though. I think Dan Quinn is the favorite to the point where I'd say it's 50% Dan Quinn, 50% the field.
Yeah, exactly.
If I was DraftKings, I would set him at least minus 200.
Yeah. All right, now let's hop over to our board right now and update that really quick. If anything's changed in your mind, guys. We all had Doug Peterson as 1. Are you guys going to change that on your individual board?
Yes. While I still think he's one of the top candidates, or if not the top candidate of this class, I just don't even feel like he's worth talking about anymore. So
that's how I feel. He's still my number 1, but it doesn't make sense to hold on to a guy that the Broncos aren't even going to talk about.
Right. It's like, I don't know, like saying like you want Kyler Murray when it was like a foregone conclusion
right.
that the Cardinals were going to take him and you had no shot at him. And
he still stays number 1 on your draft board, but you don't really talk about
and
him.
Also, John Elway had said he was too short.
Right. Exactly.
So it's like, there's no point in holding on to this hope anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think that honestly, that's why I'm actually moving Dan Quinn up to number 1.
Of your favorites.
Yes.
So he goes off the list to number 1.
And here's why. When you look at some of the offensive coaches that are being talked about here, and there have been rumblings, I know Benjamin Albright has talked about this, that maybe it's Mike McDaniel coming from the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan, working with Dan Quinn. We mentioned kind of the Luke Getsy possibility, with the Mike McCarthy connection there. And I think those possibilities because you get Dan Quinn's experience. I think that's the most attractive setup that is realistically possible here.
I got to be honest. Like I said when we were doing the quick breakdowns, the more I think about Dan Quinn, the more I like it. It's not necessarily flashy, but the Broncos don't necessarily need flashy. They just need good. And I think Dan Quinn could be really good. So that I was the only one who had him on my list at all yesterday. Now he's moving up to number 1 for you. I'm taking Peterson out of my number 1. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, really quick on Dan Quinn. Mike McDaniel is a name we need to be talking about for the potential offensive coordinator job. If it's Dan Quinn as the head coach and Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator, I will be incredibly disappointed. Because
Really?
this is a situation that we've talked about, or not we, but that has been talked about a lot leading up to this week, even before this weekend. I know Benjamin Albright's been putting it out there. There's been other people talking about it. That means the Broncos just had their whole mind made up. And for all the credit that I'm giving them right now for having this expanded search, this would be a show.
I think you're underselling. You're saying they're forcing McDaniel on him, or
No,
just
McDaniel worked for Quinn.
Yeah.
I'm
McDaniel
saying-
loves Quinn.
I'm saying this
Or-
whole thing
or
would
Quinn loves
be
McDaniel.
would be a show because they would have known from the get-go.
right? And George Payton's like, I can do 11 Zoom calls to
Right.
make it look like we did a
And to
search.
me, it would just be, now maybe that's who they wanted all along, and if it works out, great, but why are we putting on a show then? It would disappoint me.
You gotta at least give yourself a chance to be wowed by someone and think twice.
Exactly.
And I think that's what this would be. Is look, Dan Quinn's up here, all of you are down here. Show me how you can jump him.
Right. But all this credit I'm giving, I'd have to take some back.
You'd be absolutely right too. All right, I'm taking Doug Peterson off the board entirely. I'm moving Kellen Moore up to number 1.
Hey.
I am moving Dan Quinn up to number 2. And I'm moving Kevin O'Connell into my number 3 spot.
You're stealing my guy
You
there.
want the McVay secret sauce, huh?
I do, yeah. Just like so many women out there.
Hey now.
I want the McVay secret sauce.
He's happily engaged, I thought.
I'm sure he is. I just
Been engaged for a while.
I want if you're going with my style, it's young, it's offense. I wanted Zach Taylor. I wanted Cliff Kingsbury. Those are my kind of guys. Who's the other one? Kyle Shanahan. Those are my kind of guys. But I have to acknowledge.
Did you see with Kyle Shanahan yesterday though what he said about how even he, young as he is, the references that he gives to don't hit anymore? He said he referenced Wedding Crashers and nobody on the team got it.
Oh my God.
But you know what he does do? He plays popular music all throughout the building. Yeah. He's wearing like Yeezys and Jordans. He connects with the players. So in the important things and like the true culture things,
Wedding Crashers?
he gets it.
Wedding Crashers isn't withstanding the test of time.
You're aging yourself now.
That's incredible.
I'm going Kevin O'Connell as my number 1. When this name came out yesterday, I didn't think they were going to go down this route, but when it did, I got so happy. I had a smile on my face the next hour and a half. I would absolutely love this hire. I love that they're talking to him. I think he is the next Sean McVay or, offensive guru coming out of there, and I think he's got the leadership as well. Number 2.
Really quick, what separates him and Kellen Moore in your eyes?
Well, I'm going number 2, Kellen Moore.
Okay.
So not much. What I really like is just the being under Sean McVay, learning from him, and having Sean McVay just love him so much and give him so much responsibility. From what I understand, it's more responsibility than he's given any other offensive coach under him, and I think that speaks volumes to who he thinks he is. Kellen Moore, number 2, and number 3. I'm going Dan Quinn. I am getting more and more sold on Dan Quinn. I just, you want the young offense, but everything else that Dan Quinn brings is really good.
Well, on my list, Harbaugh is looks like he's using this to get a raise from Michigan.
Which is what I said from the
Shocker.
second the report dropped.
Yeah, keep cashing
And
in
he'll
there,
deserve
Harbs.
that raise.
Yes,
Absolutely.
10 years, $100 million. Congratulations.
Even though he's not on the Broncos list at this point, I'm not moving Jim Caldwell from 2.
Oh, okay.
Fair.
Love that. You don't have.
Yeah,
It can be your list the whole way through, and they never talk to a guy. That's fine.
it could be the list. More thinking about Dan Quinn is why I've got him at number 1. The problem is, I've been consistent, and I have to be consistent. I would rather have somebody who's been a head coach before, and that's why I look at these other names. I see some bright minds, some interesting names, but I feel like there's going to be some first time mistakes for them, and so
There will.
they all give me some degree of pause. I'm going to put Jerod Mayo on there.
Oh, nice.
And maybe it's a little
God, that scares me.
recency bias because
scare me.
I did a lot of research into him yesterday and got some good feedback on him. But I feel like the thing that strikes me is this: he's always leaned on people who know more than he does. Like he gets to New England, for example, and the first guy that he really kind of dives into to get to know is Teddy Bruschi, and he's somebody that has a thirst for learning from and being around more experienced people. I think Mayo would actually put together a hell of a staff of people, and he would go putting together that staff, finding people who know more than he does.
You know what the number
And
one...
that's why I think he might be a real dark horse here, guys.
You know the number one thing I like about Dan Quinn is that just none of these other guys can do, and it's that he's not going to be over his head. You can guarantee that he will not be in over his head when he sets foot on campus, if you will, on the Broncos or in the Broncos organization. There is a lot of stuff in the Broncos organization that just needs steadying, and that is something that I just keep coming back to. And honestly, a reason why he might end up moving up to number 1 in my rankings at some point during this process is this ship needs a captain. And I don't just mean the football team. The entire ship needs a captain, and an owner is going to come in here and be that too. But there's still a lot of things just around that worry me. And I think that bringing in someone like this is not going to look at all these fires and say, oh my God, call the fire department. They're going to say, give me the extinguisher, I got this. And that's something that I worry with, like a Jerod Mayo, where he walks in and he's like, oh my God, I've been in the Patriots organization all this time where all this stuff is just perfect. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, I have to deal with that, and that. But I'm just trying to coach football over here. That worries me about some of these guys. It's not just Jerod Mayo. It's Kellen Moore and Kevin O'Connell as well.
That is true, and that's something that Dan Quinn can prove, as these other guys can't. But that's also what George Paton's brought here to do.
100%.
And so that is big time on George Paton as well. And the GM and head coach have to work together on those things. And I just really hope that George Paton is already undertaking that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Patriot thing is do your job. And part of that is don't try to do too much. Be able to trust people to do their job so you can do your job. And that's why and again, kind of the corporate background that Mayo had as well after his playing career. I think he would surround himself with people that he could trust to do their job so he could do kind of the big picture coaching job.
You really hope. It's just a question.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I think is going to calm George Paton's nerves, is he's not going to have to worry, how are you going to react to these types of situations? And George Paton said it himself. It's not just coaching that's the problem for the Broncos. I think after this coach is hired, you're going to see all sorts of changes, top to bottom changes for the Broncos. And of course, it's not going to be a George Paton's decision, but an owner will be a part of that as well.
Yeah. One thing I can say is I don't think Mike Zimmer is going to be the coach. I know there are fans that are worried about that. Did you see some of the stuff coming out from Eric Kendricks yesterday? About now that Zimmer's gone, the honesty switch turns on. Said that there was a fear-based mentality in that organization.
Speaking of things coming out after a guy is gone, and I actually heard this Friday night or Thursday night, right before Vic Fangio was out, was he had a real problem calling plays in time. Too much thinking, too much scrambling, too much, trying to think of stuff. And so essentially he was getting in play calls at the very last moment that they possibly could. And then the defense was scrambling. Yeah. And this was something that drove defenders crazy.
And the other thing is,
especially in pressure situations.
Game situations. Look at that Raider game where the decision to go for the field goal wasn't made quickly. And we saw how upset Brandon McManus got.
And I thought Brandon McManus was in the wrong there, but it might have been a symptom of that type of stuff building up.
I'm completely on Brandon McManus's side on this.
Didn't
Because
he send him out
whether
with
it's the
30
defensive play
seconds
call,
left,
yeah,
28?
25 seconds is when
Right.
he
I
I
said.
mean, come on, that's enough time.
yeah, you've got to be quicker. You've got to a lot of these things, especially in terms of game management. You need to have these decisions made in your
steps
mind
ahead.
before. Like, okay, and that's something that you failed at, and that was a chronic issue for Vic Fangio that wasn't getting any better. Was in game management and administration. It just always seemed from a distance, and then what you're saying up close with the late play calls, chaotic.
And you know what? That's why we always said he should have at least tried coaching from
Yep.
the box.
Yep, exactly.
Because
Yes.
you're so much more. You got everything laid out in front of you. It's so much calm. There's not distractions behind you with the players, arguing or whatever. I think that is something that one day he'll look back and say, "Why didn't we just try it?"
Yep.
I agree.
Yep, because he didn't want to lose that perception as the head coach.
Lame. All right, so if a lot of changes are going to be made around, they're going to have to make a lot of phone calls. Maybe George Payton can save a few bucks by using Mint Mobile. You can save a few bucks by actually more than a few bucks by using Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile is revolutionary in the sense that they said, let's just take out these in-person stores that cost us money and then we have to charge the customer more money. We'll go all online, and this way we can offer customers deals as low as $15 per month, and all of their deals come with unlimited talk and text. You just choose how much data you need to use, and obviously that will determine your price. It's delivered to you on the nation's largest 5G network. This is a legit product. All you do is sign up for Mint Mobile online. They will deliver a SIM card to your house. You pop that thing in, boom, you're working on Mint Mobile. All of us have tried it. All of us use it. It's great stuff. Check out Mint Mobile.
And check out our friends over at Strava Craft Coffee, where not only is it delicious coffee that packs a CBD punch, and CBD can help relieve aches, pains, headaches, migraines, anything that's going on with your body can help relieve. But on top of that, some people say it gets rid of the coffee jitters. You can have as much coffee as you want and not feel the jitters. That's a great way to start off your day. But they're offering another 2-in-1 punch. If you use the code DNVR25 over at StravaCraftCoffee.com, you'll get 25% off your first order of this delicious coffee. And then after that, if you go on their website and subscribe, you'll save 20% on every single order after that. And you can even have it set up where it's shipped to you every 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, or however often you want. It'll show up at your door at 20% off forever. So make sure to check them out over at StravaCraftCoffee.com and use code DNVR25.
And if you do want to check out Mint Mobile, I needed to mention mintmobile.com/DNVR. Check out all their options that they have to offer there. All right, guys, let's jump into questions here. And I believe we have a few super chats to hit before we jump into the ones on the website. This one from Mr. Stew Meat. This is a super sticker. I'll describe it for you guys. Always fun here. Hippo character with stars growing in his eyes, pumping his arms in the air with the word hype pulsating above him.
Interesting.
I feel
love
like
it.
that, Hippo.
We're all hype right now. Yep.
All right, next one here from Jerod Barton. Not sure I'm sold on Doug Peterson, offensive-minded coach. Only had one top 10 scoring offense with the Eagles. Once OC Frank Reich left, they only regressed. Is that cause for concern? I just don't think it matters. The Broncos aren't going to entertain the guy.
We don't even have to worry about Doug Peterson now.
But yeah, I mean, it is. You have to look into all this stuff when you're making those types of decisions.
Yeah, I mean, you're concerned about Carson Wentz regressing, although, as we saw down the stretch at times, Wentz didn't exactly light the world up in Indianapolis this past year when he got back with Frank Reich. So
Yeah, and there's like reports of Wentz and Peterson not getting along. The more you learn about Wentz, the more you realize he's not this like happy-go-lucky guy that he made himself out to be during the draft process.
Exactly.
And Peterson could be the same way.
hey, sometimes
That's why I'd want to interview
the
him.
NFL can change a guy. I mean, Carson Wentz went from North Dakota to Philadelphia.
Yep.
Hey, I like Philly. We all like Philly, but that can change a man.
It definitely can and probably did.
Didn't he marry a Philly girl too? I think.
I don't know,
think
but
so.
I think it's possible.
Yeah, I thought so.
All right.
For what it's worth.
You want to jump into questions from the listeners now?
Bronc Oilers says a lot has been said about which side of the ball the next head coach will be from, and while I think that element is a bit overplayed, there is something to be said for a defensive coach being able to consistently keep a strong offensive staff. If we bring in a head coach and his offensive coordinator gets things turned around for our offense, that OC will likely get head coach offers as high-performing OCs are getting promoted a year or two after. After an offensive play caller at head coach that can maintain that standard and the schematic continuity throughout their tenure is a huge advantage. It doesn't matter who the the offensive coordinator in Kansas City is because Andy Reid is their play caller, and he isn't going anywhere. Same for the guys like Frank Wright or Cliff Kingsbury. Sure, Quinn hit on Shanahan, and a lesser extent Sark, but those guys that had quarterbacks and like quarterbacks and head coaches aren't falling off trees, and I'm not super confident that any defensive coordinator can consistently hire an offensive coordinator every 2 or 3 seasons that works out.
I think it's a really good point. It's my number one concern with hiring a defensive mind is even if they bring in a great offensive coordinator, there's a chance they're gone in a couple years. And even if you nail the hire again, it's likely that you're going to have to change your scheme in the process.
That's a great problem to have. If
It
you
is a
get
great
to that
problem.
point where your offense is that good, probably have the quarterback in place.
very
you
true.
Probably do so, and you hope that you're also developing guys below him so that if that offensive coordinator does leave, the quarterback coach can step up.
Well, that's the whole thing like with Green Bay, right? You have LaFleur, and then you have Hackett, and then you have Getsy. And if they lose Hackett, well, then Getsy probably moves on up to that role. In Kansas City, if this is the cycle where Eric Bieniemy gets hired, Mike Kafka just slides right into that spot.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you have the offensive coach.
Yeah.
But when you lose Kyle Shanahan and you got to go hire Sark, like you're making a change there. There's maybe some
Unless you're continuing to develop, I think, down below. Like, let's say you hire Dan Quinn and you hire Mike McDaniel, and then the next, hopefully, you've got the next.
Rich Scangarello is your offensive, or your
Maybe
your
he's your
quarterback coach.
your pass game coordinator, and then Scangarello with a second shot proves more worthy of the gig than he did the first time.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. T.C. McCartney is a guy, that
Yeah.
you could bring back. And
Where's
be
TC right now, by the way?
He's in Cleveland.
Okay.
Yep.
So he's still in the kind of in the Kubiak Shanahan
Exactly. That's
orbit.
Right. Exactly. That's kind of why I brought
Yeah.
that up. And he worked with McDaniel in San Francisco. So there you go. Next one from Orange is the new sack. I have faith in George. I really do. I love the candidates he's set to interview, just not a fan of the idea of Bieniemy for obvious reasons. And Jim Caldwell does scare me. Perhaps that's just because I'm so used to seeing him with a lion on his hat. Yuck. I'm a fan of Brian Flores. Not sure why Miami let him go. He was winning, and players respected him. Also, thanks for the great coverage all season, boys. Love the new camera angles on the live pod. Looking even more professional. Shout out to super producer Kale. That was all his idea. And he's on the switchboard back there, making it all work, making it look pretty.
Yeah, big shout out to Kalen. Big shout out to you. Orange is the new sack. Next one coming in from C. Fillmore.
Can I just add one thing? You surprised no Brian Dable on the Broncos list as he's starting to pop up for a lot more jobs.
There's just been something with him where he just hasn't gained traction, not just this year, but the past couple of years. I mean, a little bit now, but still.
Surprised you wouldn't have the conversation, though.
Yeah.
Especially
I wish.
given his successful
Scout and
development
develop.
and identification of Josh Allen.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Broncos interview Sean McDermott.
No.
So there's another one that was successful that they didn't interview. More and more reasons why I like that.
And that was McDermott was interesting because that was a kind of a two-step thing for Buffalo where McDermott, they bring him in first, but he made it clear the general manager he wanted to work with was Brandon Beane. They waited until after the draft to make their move on then GM Doug Whaley and brought in Beane. Both of them came together from Carolina. And that's where the whole thing of Peyton, Quinn, even though it may have taken a little longer to work it out, that's where the whole thing you kind of you think about two people who kind of had an idea they wanted to work together before and being on the same page. Very much kind of like Lynch and Kyle Shanahan.
You
too.
need all sails pointed in the same direction.
Right.
And that's something that you likely get with Quinn.
Yep, exactly. C. Fillmore72 says, gentlemen, greetings from the UK. Just looking at the 2022 schedule and see that once again we have a road game at the Jaguars. That's Jaguars, Zach, not Jaguars and Jaguars. Surely it's time for the NFL to ask the Broncos to have a game in London, right? Hope to see you over here come November for a special DNVR tailgate on tour with the British, Irish, and European part of Broncos Country. Bring the Breck Brews over on the plane. You can't buy them over here. Cheers to all the DNVR family around the world, Christopher.
Fingers crossed. And that would be amazing. Also, hopefully, the pandemic is a little more, controlled by then, and everyone can go and just live it up. Because if the Broncos win, the Broncos get a London game, we are going to do it big.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I'll tell you that.
So here's like who the Jaguars have, by the way, for next year as So one of these games is going to be in London. Obviously, divisional opponents: Houston, Indianapolis, Tennessee, Denver, Las Vegas, Dallas, the New York Giants, and the Baltimore Ravens. I imagine the Jaguars would say, you're not taking that Cowboy game from us.
Right, because Cowboys fans are everywhere.
Right. So you start thinking of who's an attractive opponent that maybe they could sell. See, I could see and they may not want to lose a Giants game because the Giants have a decent fan base, but I could see New York, they're a bad team, but it's New York. Or I could really see the Raiders getting that
New
call.
York would be another one that they'd want to hold on. There's so many New Yorkers in
I
Florida.
think the one the league may look at is not the Broncos right now, but the Raiders.
But the Broncos had a game that was taken away from them, so the league kind of owes them one.
They do.
They'll get it in the next few years.
Yeah.
But also don't forget the international marketing, the Broncos chose Mexico.
Oh, right.
As a secondary market, it was interesting that some teams had 3 or 4 markets. I thought the Broncos would also do a European market, and they chose not to. They chose to focus entirely on Mexico. I would have liked to have seen them say, hey, let's go Ireland. Let's push our brand in Ireland.
It makes sense, though. So many teams on the East Coast probably wanted to focus on
But
Europe.
you had some West Coast teams that focused on Europe as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Mexico City game, count me in on that as well.
7,000 feet. Love it.
Yes. All right, from Some People Call Me the Space Cowboy. On YouTube, NFL Throwback has a great video of the evolution of quarterbacking. They describe 6 trees of quarterback style. Playbook Master, Aikman, Otto Graham. 2, the Arm Branch, Marino, Bradshaw. 3, the Prototype, Manning, Unitas. 4, Scramblers, Murray, Wilson, Young. 5, Precision Passers, Breeze, Warner, Montana. 6, Backyard Bomber, Mahomes, Favre, Elway. 7, Barrier Bruiser.
Buster.
Barrier Buster. Briscoe, Moon. 8, Dual Threat, Jackson, Newton, Vic. Based on these categories, what type of quarterback would you like to see on the Broncos next season? I predict Mase would say Prototype, Zach would say Playbook Master, and RK would say Scrambler.
Well, so what's what's Prototype? I feel like that's just...
It's like the tall, classic pocket
But
passer.
I think those prototypes also fit in as precision passers.
I think it also fits in with Playbook Master.
Yeah. See,
There's definitely overlap.
But the thing is, Playbook Master, Prototype, and Precision Passers, what those have in common is those are guys that are really strong mentally.
Right.
And that's what I'm looking. And that's
me too.
To
Mac
me,
Jones, baby.
for everything starts with the brain for a quarterback for me.
Yeah. I would actually probably go Backyard Bomber. I need the guy who just makes big plays off the script. You're in a 2-minute drill. Obviously, Elway, the king of it. Just running around, finding open guys, making plays. That's the type of quarterback I want because I feel like the bigger the game gets, the more you need that.
Yeah, you enjoy Brett Favre's interceptions, my friend.
Yeah, I don't want Favre. Give me Mahomes and Elway.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's in there, though. I like that question.
But Mahomes is also a precise passer.
Yeah, and
who is a playbook master.
That's what I mean.
That's why he's such a unicorn. Is he doesn't just have it here; he's got it here.
Yep.
Just like Elway.
Yeah.
Yep. At Bronco and SF says, seeing all the interview requests has me so excited. This feels different than previous Broncos head coaching searches and approaches to the game. Youth, analytics, diversity, modern football at its finest. I don't see Doug Peterson on the list. Think he's coming or not?
Nope.
Doesn't seem like it. Antonio Acosta says, a coach we don't hear about and even a possible connection to the future ownership. What is Jim Caldwell doing nowadays? And can in any chance he could be a candidate? The guy took the damn Lions to 2 playoff appearances in 4 years. Yes, the Detroit Lions. That's like saying you beat a Tesla Roadster with a Kia. Also, on another note, what are the odds the NFL changes overtime to eliminate times? You had 2 teams seriously consider a tie for playoffs. Here is my idea. Each team guaranteed 1 possession via kickoff to attempt and score as they see fit. Touchdown or field goal. Safety at any time ends the game. But after unsuccessful 4th down, field goal, or turnover on first possession, there is a kickoff for the second team's possession. If game is tied after this, we go a new NCAA rule. 2-point conversion, play until there is a winner.
I like everything except the whole thing of kickoff for the second team's possession. I do like I wish the NFL would guarantee each team one possession.
That's the number one thing for me.
That's the thing that needs to change. Even if you get a touchdown, the other team gets an opportunity, because like in that Chargers-Chiefs game, they're like, oh well, they should have stopped the Chiefs. What you're saying is, because of the coin flip and the Chiefs drove and scored, half the players, Chargers offense, Chiefs defense, had no say in the overtime result.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Just give each team one possession. Then after that, it's sudden death. And if the 10 minutes expires, then you go to college-style overtime, which to me is the equivalent of penalty kicks in soccer.
You're just saying the two-point conversion?
No, I'm saying
the whole thing.
I'm saying 25-yard line. But you can't go. You can't go for one. You can only go for two.
That's where you lose me on that one. I love it. The players will never go for it on something that can go that long. So I don't think you can eliminate the tie entirely, but I think you do need to go both team gets a possession no matter what. I just don't think that the possibility of a game of players getting 25, 30 more reps in a game is not something they'll sign on.
Then why are we saying any overtime in the regular season? Why don't we just say if it's tied at 60 minutes, it's a tie? That's it.
Well, and then also, I mean, why are we adding more games? Because another game adds another 60,
course.
70, 80 plays, and they signed
the
off on it.
The players don't want to do that.
Justin Simmons made that very clear. They do like the paycheck, though, that comes with it. And on top of that,
you don't get more paychecks for more reps in overtime.
That's true. That's true. I would love college overtime from the 40. I would love that.
Instead of the 25.
Yep.
25 is a little too easy for NFL kickers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You do it from the 40, and I would absolutely love that. My thing with Jim Caldwell, and I guess my question for Mase is my biggest concern with him is the past 4 seasons, he's been out of the NFL for 3 of them.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah? Dick Vermeil was out of the NFL for 14 seasons.
How long ago was that?
It was in the late 90s. He won a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I just would prefer someone that's still around, and I'm not saying I take him off my list. That's just something that's interesting, concerning. Why isn't he around?
Sometimes some space can give you a different perspective, and I know that there were health issues involved. He's fine. He's in good shape now, and so I think that's part of the reason why you haven't seen him pop up for 3 of the last 4 years as well. Bruce Arians went and did broadcasting and then came for a year and then came back.
That's what I said, for a year. Yeah, and Doug Peterson did it for a year. These guys do it for a year. Again, I'm not taking him off my list. Yeah. I'm not trying to destroy him, but he hasn't coached. He hasn't been a head coach since 2017.
Yeah, I mean, has that much changed?
I feel like it has. So. Yeah.
No, I see. The game was already the change. I think happened in the early 2010s.
I think
some point the game is pretty. The game has kind of stabilized in this air-centric era over the last 6 or 7 years, and Caldwell was in Detroit as part of that. I don't think he's that far removed from
I feel like since 2017, you went from coaching millennials to coaching Gen Z. And I think that matters.
It's true. Yep.
Okay, this one's from the Sobey brothers. I think we got time for 1, maybe 2 more. Greetings, gentlemen. We would like to aggravate the Kirk Cousins controversy, as ourselves are split in opinion. This is the Sobey brothers here.
I love it.
Old Sobey is pro-Kirk. Younger is anti-Kirk. Kirk Cousins seems like a true Rorschach test.
The ink blots.
Right. I knew what it was. I just didn't know the pronunciation. And we would like to hear more of your cases, both for and against him as the next Broncos quarterback. On a related note, each of you answered this question. Are wins a valid statistic for QBs? We apologize if you've answered this question before. We've only recently discovered the pod. Okay.
Kirk Cousins is an entire podcast subject onto himself.
Yes, it is.
At some point.
We will do that. For me, he's just too corny. He's too expensive.
I mean, on top of both of those things, he's not a winner, and so that goes to quarterback wins. And absolutely, quarterback wins are a stat, and I know Mase completely disagrees with me. It's the most important position in sports, the position that has the most power in all of sports, and I'm fine with no offensive tackle win and loss because they don't control it. The quarterback controls it the most. Now, do you also realize that there's other factors? Of course you do. But I think if a quarterback plays long enough, that stat definitely matters.
I don't want to take this in a direction that is going to inflame everybody or a certain percentage of the population.
He's about to inflame me right now.
But one of the things that's kind of come out as we've learned more about the Vikings and what went down, I mentioned the stuff that Eric Kendricks said about kind of a fear-based organization. Well, from Mike Zimmer's perspective, one of the things that frustrated him was the number of players that did not get the vaccine. Part of that coming from Kirk Cousins' position of leadership in the locker room, implying that there were guys who didn't want to fall afoul of Cousins as a locker room leader. And Zimmer talked about like how some of these guys, what they're consuming on this is out there. And I think that, and every indication is a lot of that started with the quarterback position. I think we may be in a kind of a spot where Cousins is not a wise play for reasons that go beyond football.
Yeah, as for quarterback wins, I fall somewhere in the middle here.
No, you got to be for it or against it. Do you look at the stat?
George Payton appears to be for quarterback wins because when he was talking about Drew Lock on Sunday, he mentioned that he didn't turn the ball over but didn't win.
Yeah. So for me, there's like a cutoff period here where I'll say you can't give mediocre quarterbacks too much credit for winning when it's all about the defense or the running game. But there's never been an elite quarterback that wasn't a winner. And so you have to take that into consideration. I almost would call it like the Archie Manning rule or something, like where he's like one of the only ones where I can say if he was in a better situation, he would have been a winner. It's not his fault. So it's a piece of the puzzle. I absolutely acknowledge it. I don't throw it away. But I don't want to make too much of a big deal out of it.
On top of that, though, Ryan, let's say you do have a middling quarterback that's on a great team, and so he has a really good record. How often does that get sustained for 10 years? I mean, it doesn't happen. It'll happen for 1 or 2 years, and then the team falls apart because you have to have that quarterback. And then so let's say that if that team continues to fall apart, then that quarterback's record is going to also fall apart. Let's say he gets benched and he only played 24 games and he had a 17-7 record. Well, it's clear that he only played 24 games because he wasn't good.
And you have to evaluate it in the big picture as well because, I mean, there were 3 consecutive years with Drew Brees at quarterback that the Saints went 7-9.
Yep.
But
he'd won in the past, but it would have been foolish for the Saints to move on from Brees after that. So you have to kind of look at what's around. And did the quarterback elevate that team over what it was? The Saints had so little talent at that point that it was clear that Brees was the reason why they were still competitive, even though if you just went raw win-loss record, well, they've had 3 losing seasons with Brees.
Yeah, but then you have to look at that's cherry-picking a couple of individual seasons. If you look at Drew Brees' entire... Yeah, a couple. 3,
yeah,
sure.
A few.
A couple is 2.
Okay. 3, a few. If you look at Drew and you don't cherry pick and you look at Drew Brees' entire thing, well, there's no question. Of course he's a winner.
Yeah, the one, what about Matt Stafford? You holding it against him that he couldn't have a winning record in Detroit?
Yeah, I am. 0 playoff wins, and we talked about it a year ago when the Broncos were potentially going to acquire him. Something mind-blowing like 8-40 or 8-24 against teams with a winning record. Yeah, if you're a damn good quarterback, you make that closer to 500. I mean, that is a good case, though. He is a better quarterback than his record would suggest. But I think for the most part, if you look at these, it does even out.
Yep, I think he had a win over the Cardinals earlier this season. It was the first time he had ever won a game against a team that had 10 wins coming into the game.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Great quarterbacks can elevate occasionally.
But how many opportunities did he have, though? That would actually be worth looking at. And how many of them were like playing the Packers with one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the history of the sport and getting beat, for example, they lost a game to the Packers on a freaking Hail Mary at the end.
Right. And
is that on Matthew Stafford?
But
no.
That's what I'm saying. That's just one thing. If you look at the whole picture, I do think it's a good stat. And Mason and I will never agree about this, and that's totally fine.
Because QB wins to me aren't a stat.
Right.
Teams win
and I'm
games.
somewhere in between you guys. I think it's something that you can't ignore. It's something that you can't pay too much attention to.
And even coaches matter greatly. And we talk about the record of the team with the coach. But at the same time, as I pointed out last night, if the Broncos had focused on John Fox's last season, in Carolina it was 2-14. if they think of that as a reason not to hire John Fox, they may not get Peyton Manning.
But again, that's cherry picking 1 year. You take a step back and look at the
but
entire
there are
picture.
people that are denigrating Dan Quinn because they went 0-5 and he got fired
Well,
in his
also
last
this
season.
is head coach.
And they're
compared
cherry-picking.
to-
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is, if you don't cherry pick, it's a great stat.
And that debate will rage on forever.
Yep.
And we don't have time to do that today. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us here. One last shout out to MSU Denver, our presenting sponsor of this show, MSU Denver, where students work twice as many hours as students attending any other college institution, meaning if you're looking to work a full-time job and further your education, there's no better place to go than MSU Denver. What a pod. 10 out of 10 from my perspective. Appreciate everyone who listened. Hit us with a thumbs up so more people can get this and get all that information that we shared about these head coaching candidates. More to come. We will be going crazy with the content over the next few weeks leading up to the Broncos getting a head coach. And then, of course, we'll keep it rolling when they do hire a new head coach. Stay right here with us. Actually, little update for you guys. Starting tomorrow, we will be going live at noon every single day during this coaching search, unless something comes up crazy that changes that. But you can set your alarms for noon Mountain Time. Don't tell me about some Eastern time. There's only one time zone that I subscribe to.
But don't forget, in Europe, we're a primetime show.
Well, yeah, there you go.
In England, in Ireland, this is a 7 p.m. show. You go to the continent, France, Germany, it's 8 p.m. We are prime time on the other side of the ocean.
There you go. We're your new primetime show. Forget Yellowstone or whatever else you're watching. Tune into the DNVR Broncos podcast. Appreciate you all for tuning in. Hit us with a like on your way out, and we'll catch you tomorrow.